Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly across the smooth crystal floor. His black dress uniform felt tight around his chest. The huge room around him was unlike anything on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of glowing crystal that changed colors every few seconds. Above him, the ceiling stretched up so high he could barely see the top dot. All around the room, strange creatures sat on floating platforms. Some had 6 arms like giant spiders. Others looked like walking trees with eyes all over their bark-like skin. A few had no solid shape at all, just clouds of gas that somehow talked and moved. Jake had studied alien species for years, but seeing them all together still made his stomach feel weird. Ambassador Helen Carter stood next to him. She was a small woman with gray hair, but Jake knew she was one of the smartest people on Earth. Her face looked calm, but Jake could see her hands shaking just a little. They both knew this day would decide Earth's future in the galaxy. The leader of the meeting was a creature called Senator Vexthara. She came from a planet where the people looked like giant mantis insects. Her green skin reflected the crystal light as she raised all 6 of her arms. The room became quiet. "The vote is complete," she said. Her voice came through a small device that changed her alien sounds into English. "The Galactic Senate has made its decision about the human request for full membership." Jake felt his heart beating fast. Earth had waited 50 years for this moment. Ever since humans first met aliens, they had dreamed of joining the big galactic community. They wanted to trade with other worlds, learn new science, and explore the far reaches of space together with other intelligent species. "The vote count is 31 against and 16 in favor," Vexthara continued. "Earth's petition for membership is denied." The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. Around the room, many of the alien creatures made sounds that the translator couldn't convert. Some sounded happy. Others sounded worried. But Vexthara wasn't done talking. She picked up a datapad with her lower arms while keeping her upper arms raised for attention. "Furthermore, this Senate has reviewed evidence of human behavior and history. We find the human species to be unsuitable for civilized galactic society. The evidence shows humans are too violent, too quick to fight, and too dangerous to be allowed free movement among peaceful worlds." Helen stepped forward. Her voice was steady and professional. "Senator Vexthara, humans have made great progress in reducing conflict on our world. We have not fought a major war in over 40 years. Our crime rates are at historic lows. We came here in good faith seeking friendship and cooperation." A creature that looked like a walking crystal formation spoke up. This was Counselor Rethmus from the Hegemony Alliance. "Ambassador Carter, your species' history speaks for itself. In just the last century, your people killed over 100 million of your own kind in wars. You still maintain massive military forces. Your entertainment glorifies violence. Even your sports involve combat and aggression." "We have learned from our past," Helen replied. "Every species has made mistakes during their development. We are here to prove that humans can be trusted partners in galactic civilization." "The evidence suggests otherwise," said another alien. "This one looked like a floating jellyfish with glowing tentacles. Our studies show that humans solve problems through force rather than discussion. When faced with challenges, your first instinct is to fight rather than negotiate. This makes you incompatible with our peaceful way of life." Jake wanted to speak up to defend his species, but protocol demanded silence. Only Helen could speak for Earth in this chamber. Vexthara raised her arms again. "The Senate has therefore voted on Resolution 2847. This resolution will place strict limits on human expansion beyond your home solar system. Any human vessel found outside the Sol system without specific permission will be considered a threat to galactic peace." The room erupted in alien sounds. Some species cheered. Others made noises that sounded like concern or disagreement. The translator devices struggled to keep up with all the different languages being spoken at once. "This is essentially a quarantine," Helen said, her calm voice cutting through the noise. "You are trapping humanity in our own system like prisoners. You are free to develop your civilization within your natural boundaries, Rethmus replied. When your species learns to embrace peaceful cooperation over violent competition, we will reconsider your status. And who decides when we have learned? Enough, Helen asked. Who judges whether we have changed sufficiently to earn your approval? This Senate will review your progress every 50 Earth years, Vexthara said. Until then, the quarantine remains in effect. Any violation will result in immediate military response from the Galactic Defense Force. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. These creatures were treating humans like dangerous animals that needed to be kept in a cage. They spoke of peace and cooperation, but they were using the threat of military force to keep Earth isolated. The worst part was how reasonable they made it sound. They weren't trying to destroy humanity. They weren't being cruel or evil. They genuinely believed they were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species. In their minds, humans were simply too primitive and violent to be trusted among civilized beings. As the session ended, Jake and Helen were escorted toward the exit by floating security robots. The other aliens returned to their conversations, already moving on to other business. To them, the human problem was solved. Earth was contained, the galaxy was safe, and life could continue as normal, walking through the corridors of the Senate building. Jake activated a small communication device hidden in his uniform. He typed a short message using a code that looked like routine diplomatic communication. The message was only 3 words, but Jake knew those words would change everything. He sent them to a secure location on Earth where very important people were waiting for this exact signal. Prometheus protocol activated. Helen saw him send the message, but said nothing. She knew as well as Jake did that this humiliation would not stand. The aliens had made a serious mistake. They had assumed that humans would simply accept their judgment and quietly remain in their solar system like obedient children. They were about to learn that humans didn't respond well to being caged. 6 months had passed since the Senate's vote. Deep underground in a military base in Colorado, Admiral Lisa Hayes stood before a room full of the most important military leaders on Earth. The room was carved out of solid rock, hundreds of feet below the surface. No alien spy satellites could see what happened here. The air in the room felt heavy with tension. Everyone knew why they were here. The message from Jake Morrison had reached Earth exactly 183 days ago. Since then, every branch of Earth's military had been working around the clock on Project Prometheus. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Hayes began, the aliens made a serious mistake when they voted to cage humanity. They thought we would sit quietly in our solar system and accept their judgment. They were wrong. She pressed a button on the table in front of her. The lights dimmed and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a 3-dimensional map of human space, but it looked very different from what the aliens believed existed. Dr. Kevin Brooks will explain our technological progress, the Admiral said. A thin man with thick glasses stood up. Dr. Brooks had spent his entire life studying alien technology. Every piece of equipment that came to Earth through limited trade deals had passed through his laboratory. When the aliens first made contact with us, Dr. Brooks said, they assumed we were primitive because we hadn't developed faster-than-light travel on our own. What they didn't realize is that humans are very good at taking existing technology and making it better. The holographic display changed to show detailed technical drawings. They looked like alien spaceship engines, but with significant modifications. Their faster-than-light drives work by bending space around a ship, he continued. It's elegant and efficient. But we discovered something they missed. By adding human-designed fusion reactors and quantum processors, we can make their drives 30% faster and twice as reliable. General Ryan Taylor stood up next. He was a large man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his early days as a fighter pilot. The aliens know about 12 exploration ships and 36 defense platforms. That's what we reported to them, and that's what their spy networks have confirmed. The holographic display changed again. Now it showed hundreds of ships scattered throughout the outer solar system. What they don't know about is the Shadow Fleet, Ryan continued. 217 warships built in secret facilities on asteroids and hidden bases. Each one is equipped with the improved alien technology Dr. Brooks described. A woman in a Navy uniform raised her hand. This was Commander Amy Wright, head of Earth's Cyber Warfare Division. The aliens have a weakness they don't even know about. She said, their entire civilization is based on trust and cooperation. They never developed strong computer security because they never needed to protect themselves from each other. She activated her own holographic display. It showed the alien communication network as a web of glowing lines connecting different star systems. Human hackers have been quietly mapping their entire network for years, Amy explained. We know how their systems work, where their main servers are located, and how to shut down their communications across the entire galaxy. When the time comes, we can make their ships blind and deaf within minutes. Colonel Mary Johnson was the next to speak. She ran Earth's intelligence operations throughout the galaxy. For 20 years, human traders, diplomats, and researchers had been gathering information while the aliens saw them as harmless primitives. We have complete maps of every major military base, shipyard, and command center in alien space, she said. We know their patrol schedules, their supply routes, and their emergency procedures. Most importantly, we know their weaknesses. The display showed detailed layouts of alien military installations. Red markers indicated critical systems and vulnerabilities. The aliens build their defenses to fight other aliens, Mary continued. They expect long, careful battles with lots of negotiation and formal declarations of war. They're not prepared for the kind of rapid, overwhelming assault that humans specialize in. Admiral Hayes stepped forward again. The plan is simple. We will not ask the galaxy for permission to exist freely. We will take that freedom by force. But this won't be a war of destruction. This will be a hostile takeover. She pressed another button. The display now showed a timeline with dates and targets. Phase 1 begins with simultaneous strikes on communication hubs and military installations across 47 star systems. We will cut off their ability to coordinate a response while capturing or destroying their ability to fight back. Phase 2 involves seizing control of their major trade routes and economic centers. The aliens have built their entire civilization on the assumption that trade will always flow freely. When we control the shipping lanes, we control their economy. Phase 3 is political reconstruction. We will offer every alien species a choice. Join the new human-led federation as equal partners, or remain isolated like they wanted to keep us. A young officer near the back of the room raised his hand. Admiral, what about civilian casualties? We're not talking about fighting other humans here. These are different species with different biology, Admiral Hayes nodded. Excellent question. Lieutenant, our rules of engagement are strict. No attacks on civilian targets. No unnecessary destruction of infrastructure. We're going to prove that humans can wage war more humanely than the aliens wage peace. Dr. Brooks spoke up again. We've also prepared non-lethal weapons specifically designed for different alien biologies. Sonic disruptors for the Zephyrians. Electromagnetic pulse weapons for the crystal-based species. Chemical suppressants for the gas-form entities. We can disable enemy forces without killing them. The goal, Admiral Hayes concluded, is to show the galaxy that humans aren't the violent primitives they think we are. We're actually the only species capable of bringing real order and protection to this chaotic collection of worlds. She looked around the room at the faces of Earth's military leadership. These men and women had trained their entire lives for conflicts they hoped would never come. Now they faced the greatest challenge in human history. Questions? She asked. The room was silent. Everyone understood their roles. Everyone knew what was at stake. Then we proceed as planned, Admiral Hayes said. Operation Prometheus begins in 72 hours. The aliens wanted to see what humans do when we're backed into a corner. They're about to find out? As the meeting ended, the military leaders filed out of the underground chamber. Above them, Earth continued its normal daily routine. People went to work, children went to school, and life continued as if nothing had changed. But deep in space, human ships were already moving into position. In hidden bases throughout the solar system, soldiers and pilots were making final preparations. In computer centers around the world, hackers were running final tests on programs that would cripple alien communications. The galaxy had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs? The attack began at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. Across 47 star systems, human ships appeared out of hyperspace without warning. The aliens had no time to prepare, no time to send distress calls, and no time to understand what was happening to them. Captain Ben Rodriguez sat in the command chair of the UES Retribution as his ship dropped out of hyperspace near the Zephyrian homeworld. Through the bridge windows, he could see the planet's beautiful blue and green surface. 3 moons orbited around it, each one covered with the crystal cities that the insect-like Zephyrians called home. Targets acquired, reported his weapons. Officer Lieutenant Sarah Kim. 15 defense platforms detected. They're powering up their shields now. Ben nodded. The Zephyrian defenses were exactly where Earth's intelligence said they would be. All ships, this is Retribution. Execute. Attack Pattern Alpha. Remember, we want to capture those platforms intact if possible. The 16 human ships moved forward in perfect formation. The Zephyrian defense platforms were large, slow-moving structures designed to fight traditional alien wars. They expected enemies to approach carefully, exchange formal challenges, and engage in long-range duels that could last for days. Instead, the human ships accelerated to attack speed and launched kinetic projectiles. These weren't explosive weapons. They were simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic launchers. When they hit the alien platforms, the impact was devastating. Direct hits on platforms 1 through 8, Sarah reported. They're disabled but not destroyed. Platforms 9 through 15 are surrendering. The entire battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The Zephyrian defenders had never seen anything like the human attack. By the time they understood what was happening, it was already over. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. At the crystal world of Nexus Prime, human ships used electromagnetic pulse weapons to shut down the crystalline defenders without harming the living crystal beings inside. Near the gas giant where the cloud people lived, human vessels deployed, specially designed sonic disruptors that confused the gaseous aliens without causing permanent injury. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Amy Wright sat in front of dozens of computer screens in the Cyber Warfare Center. Her fingers moved rapidly across multiple keyboards as she executed the digital part of the attack. Initiating network infiltration protocols, she announced to her team. All stations report readiness. Around her, 50 of Earth's best hackers worked at their computers. They had spent months learning alien computer languages and mapping the galactic communication network. Now they put that knowledge to use. Communication Hub Alpha 7 is down, reported one hacker. Hub Alpha 12 is down. Hub Beta 3 is down. One by one, the major communication centers throughout the galaxy went offline. The aliens had built their network assuming that everyone would play by the rules. They never imagined that someone would deliberately attack the infrastructure that kept their civilization connected within 2 hours. Most alien worlds could no longer talk to each other. Military commanders couldn't coordinate their forces. Political leaders couldn't organize a response. The galactic government that had seemed so powerful just days before was suddenly blind and voiceless. Back in space, Lieutenant Commander Steve Davis led the attacks on alien supply lines. His ship, the UES Interceptor, appeared near a major cargo convoy carrying supplies to 3 different star systems. The alien cargo ships were huge, slow vessels with minimal defenses. They had never needed strong protection because piracy was almost unknown in the peaceful galactic community. When Steve's ship surrounded them, the alien crews surrendered immediately. "This is the cargo ship Peaceful Winds," came a transmission. In the translator's mechanical voice, "We are a civilian vessel carrying medical supplies and food. Please do not harm us." Steve activated his communication system. "Cargo ship Peaceful Winds, this is the Terran Federation Navy. You will not be harmed. Prepare to be boarded for inspection." Any supplies destined for military installations will be confiscated. Civilian cargo will be allowed to continue. This scene repeated throughout the galaxy. Human forces seized military supplies while allowing civilian trade to continue. They weren't trying to starve alien populations or cause unnecessary suffering. They were conducting a precise military operation designed to cripple the aliens' ability to fight back. The alien response was confused and slow. Emergency meetings were called on every major world, but without communications, the leaders couldn't coordinate their efforts. Some tried to send ships to help their allies, but they found human vessels blocking every major travel route on the world of Altair 7. The local military commander tried to organize a counterattack. General HFY gathered his fleet of 23 ships and headed toward the nearest human force. He expected to find a small group of primitive vessels that he could easily defeat. Instead, his ships encountered a full human battle group led by Admiral Patricia Moore. Her 36 ships were faster, better armed, and more advanced than anything in the alien fleet. Unknown vessels. This is Admiral Moore of the Terran Federation Navy, came the transmission. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated well. Continue your approach, and we will disable your ships by force. General HFY had fought in several conflicts during his long career, but he had never faced an enemy like this. The human ships moved with a precision and coordination that alien forces couldn't match. Their weapons were more powerful than anything he had seen. Most importantly, they seemed to know exactly where his ships were going before he gave the orders. After a brief battle that resulted in 12 of his ships being disabled, HFY ordered his remaining forces to surrender. Like many other alien commanders that day, he realized that continuing to fight would only lead to more casualties among his crews. By the end of the first day, human forces controlled 17 star systems and had effectively cut off communication between most of the remaining alien territories. The mighty Galactic Senate, which had seemed so powerful when they voted to quarantine Earth, was now scattered and unable to coordinate any kind of response. The most shocking part for the aliens wasn't the speed or effectiveness of the human attack, it was the restraint they showed. Civilian populations were evacuated before any bombardments. Prisoners were fed, given medical care, and treated according to strict rules. Infrastructure was captured intact whenever possible rather than destroyed. The humans weren't conducting a war of revenge or extermination. They were executing a takeover with the cold efficiency of a business operation. They wanted to control the galaxy, not destroy it. As reports of the day's events reached the few remaining free alien worlds, a terrifying realization began to spread. The species they had dismissed as too primitive for galactic civilization had just demonstrated military capabilities that far exceeded anything the established powers possessed. The galaxy's greatest predators had been unleashed, and they were very good at their job. 3 weeks after the human attack began, former Senator Vextara sat across from Admiral Lisa Hayes in a small conference room aboard the UES Defiance. The proud Zephyrian leader who had once dismissed humans as too primitive now found herself a prisoner on a human warship. Vextara's 6 arms hung limp at her sides. Her green skin had turned a pale yellow color that meant she was deeply upset. Through the room's windows, she could see Earth ships patrolling around her homeworld. The crystal cities on the 3 moons were dark and quiet. "I do not understand," she said through the translation device. "How did you do this so quickly? Our intelligence report said humans had only a few dozen ships." Admiral Hayes sat calmly in her chair. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations or fancy symbols. "Your intelligence was correct about what we showed you. You were wrong about what we kept hidden." On the table between them, a holographic display showed the current state of the galaxy. Red markers indicated human-controlled systems. There were many more red markers than blue ones now. 31 star systems under direct human control, Admiral Hayes continued. 15 more have surrendered and are negotiating terms. The remaining systems are cut off from each other and cannot coordinate any resistance. Vextara clicked. her mandibles together, which was a sign of frustration among her species. This was supposed to be impossible. The galactic community has kept peace for over 200 years. We have protocols, procedures, civilized ways of handling disputes. Your protocols worked fine when everyone agreed to follow them, the Admiral replied. But you made a mistake when you tried to cage a species that doesn't accept cages. General Chris Martinez entered the room carrying a datapad. He was a tall man with dark hair and the kind of calm confidence that came from years of military experience. Behind him walked several other human officers and a few aliens who wore different colored badges. Senator Vextara, I'd like you to meet some representatives from species that supported Earth during the Senate vote, General Martinez said. They've been working with us to design the new galactic government. One of the aliens was a crystalline being that sparkled in the room's light. This was Counselor Veltar from the Nexus Collective, one of the few species that had voted against the human quarantine. Vexthara, Veltar said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. The humans have treated us fairly. They have offered U.S. equal status in their new federation. Our trade has actually increased since they took control of the shipping lanes. Another alien stepped forward. This one looked like a walking tree with bark-like skin and glowing orange eyes. I am Speaker Thondol from the Forest Worlds. My people also voted to support human membership. Under the new system, we have been given protection guarantees and favorable trading agreements. Vexthara stared at these aliens with confusion. You are cooperating with the humans? They conquered your worlds by force. Actually, Veltar replied, they liberated our worlds from an inefficient and corrupt system. The old Senate was dominated by a few powerful species that made all the important decisions. Smaller worlds like ours had little real influence. Dr. Patricia Kim, Earth's chief scientist and diplomat, activated another holographic display. This one showed economic data from across the galaxy. Senator Vextara, I want you to see what we've accomplished in just 3 weeks, Dr. Kim said. Trade volume has increased by 60%. Supply shortages that plagued Outer Rim worlds for decades have been eliminated. Communication delays that used to take days now take hours. The display showed shipping routes throughout the galaxy. Under the old system, cargo had to go through multiple bureaucratic checkpoints and inspections. The new human system had eliminated most of the red tape while actually improving security. How is this possible? Vextara asked. Simple efficiency, General Martinez explained. Humans learned long ago that the best way to manage large organizations is through clear chains of command and merit-based promotion. Your old system promoted people based on political connections and species quotas rather than actual ability. Dr. Kim brought up another display showing the new governmental structure. The Terran Federation operates on principles that humans developed over centuries of trial and error. Representative democracy, individual rights, equal justice under law, and the right to defend yourself against aggression. But humans are violent, Vextara protested. Your history is filled with wars and conflicts. How can a violent species bring peace to the galaxy? Admiral Hayes leaned forward. Senator, let me explain something about human nature. We are indeed capable of great violence when necessary. But we are also capable of great restraint when violence serves no purpose. The difference is that we understand when each approach is appropriate. She gestured toward the window where Zephyrian civilians could be seen going about their daily lives on the planet below. We could have bombed your cities into rubble. We could have enslaved your population or destroyed your culture. Instead, we removed your government's ability to make war while leaving your people free to live their lives. Which approach seems more violent to you? General Martinez opened his datapad and began reading statistics. 0 civilian casualties in our entire campaign. Military casualties were less than 1% of engaged forces. Infrastructure damage was limited to military targets only. Compare that to the economic damage your quarantine was doing to human colonies and border systems. Vexthara's mandibles clicked again. She was struggling to understand how her worldview had been so completely overturned in such a short time. "What happens to species like mine that opposed you?" she asked quietly. Dr. Kim answered, "You'll be given the same choice as everyone else. Join the Federation as equal members and help us build a better galactic civilization, or remain independent in your own systems under a non-aggression treaty. There will be consequences for the leaders who voted for the quarantine," Admiral Hayes added. "You'll need to step down from positions of authority and let your people choose new representatives. But ordinary citizens won't be punished for their government's decisions." "We're not interested in revenge," General Martinez said. "We're interested in results. The old system failed because it was built on the assumption that everyone would always cooperate voluntarily. The new system is built on the assumption that cooperation must be backed by the ability to defend it." As the meeting continued, Vextara began to realize the scope of what had happened. The humans hadn't just won a military victory. They had completely redesigned galactic civilization around principles that actually worked. The species she had dismissed as too primitive had proven. They understood government, economics, and military strategy better than the supposedly advanced aliens who had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Outside the ship's windows, construction crews were already beginning to repair the damage from the brief conflicts. Human efficiency was transforming not just the political structure of the galaxy, but its entire way of doing business. The old galactic community was dead. In its place rose something that promised to be far more effective and fair than what had come before. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room that the galaxy's best chance for lasting peace had come from its supposedly most violent species. 1 year later, Ambassador Jake Morrison stood in the same crystal chamber where Earth had been rejected and humiliated. But everything was different now. The floating platforms that once held 47 alien representatives now accommodated 83 delegations from across the galaxy. The room hummed with quiet efficiency instead of endless debate. Jake wore his dress uniform again, but this time he stood as Earth's representative to the new Federal Assembly. The bitter memory of that day when humanity was caged seemed like a lifetime ago, though it had been only 8 months since the Senate's fateful vote. The center of the chamber, a simple podium, had replaced the ornate throne where Senator Vextara once presided. Behind the podium sat President Lavra Thompson, a woman who had grown up fixing engines in a small town in Kansas. Now she was the first elected leader of the Terran Federation. Chosen by representatives from dozens of worlds and species, President Thompson stood to address the assembly. She was a small woman with brown hair and calloused hands. But when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had earned her position through merit rather than inheritance or political connections. "Fellow citizens of the Federation," she began, "we gather today to mark the first anniversary of our union. In 12 short months, we have accomplished what the old galactic community failed to achieve in 2 centuries. The holographic displays around the chamber showed statistics that would have seemed impossible under the previous system. Trade volume had increased by 400%. Travel time between worlds had been cut in half. Crime rates had dropped to historic lows as Federation patrol ships maintained order along previously lawless space lanes. When the old Senate voted to quarantine humanity, President Thompson continued, "They said we were too violent and primitive for galactic civilization. They were wrong about our character, but they were right about one thing. We are different from the species that came before us." She gestured toward the assembled representatives. Among them sat former enemies alongside longtime allies. Vextara was there, but now she represented the Zephyrian colony worlds as an elected delegate, rather than an appointed senator. The change in her posture was remarkable. Where once she had been arrogant and dismissive, now she participated actively in debates and seemed genuinely committed to making the new system work. Admiral Ben Rodriguez, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, gave the military report. The numbers told a story of unprecedented success. The Federal Defense Force had grown to include ships and personnel from 37 different species. all trained according to human military doctrine but adapted for the unique capabilities of each member race. Piracy incidents have decreased by 92%, Admiral Rodriguez reported. Response time to distress calls has been reduced from days to hours. Most importantly, we haven't lost a single ship or crew member to hostile action in the past 8 months. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Species that had once viewed each other with suspicion now worked together on joint patrols and cooperative defense missions. The old system's bureaucratic delays had been replaced by rapid response protocols that actually protected civilian populations. Dr. Patricia Kim presented the economic overview. The Federation's new economic policies had eliminated many of the inefficiencies that had plagued the old system. Free trade agreements between member worlds had created opportunities that previously didn't exist. The Outer Rim worlds that used to wait months for essential supplies now receive regular deliveries, Dr. Kim explained. Worlds with surplus resources can easily trade with those in need. The result has been prosperity levels that the old system never achieved. But the most remarkable change wasn't in the statistics. It was in the attitudes of the various species themselves. Under the old galactic community, each species had jealously guarded their own interests while paying lip service to cooperation. Under the Federation, genuine partnerships had developed. Commander Amy Wright reported on the communication improvements. The new quantum communication network allowed instant contact between any 2 points in Federation space. More importantly, the network was secure against the kind of cyber attacks that had crippled the old system. Information flows freely while remaining protected, Commander Wright explained. Scientific discoveries made on one world are immediately available to researchers everywhere. Trade negotiations can be completed in hours instead of months. Jake watched the proceedings with satisfaction. The aliens who had once dismissed humans as too primitive were now eagerly adopting human organizational methods. Democratic elections had replaced hereditary appointments. Merit-based promotion had replaced political favoritism. Individual rights were now protected by law rather than depending on the goodwill of rulers. President Thompson concluded her address by looking directly at the representatives from worlds that had opposed human membership in the old Senate. Some of you voted to cage humanity because you feared our capacity for violence, she said. You were right to recognize that capacity. But you failed to understand that the same traits that make humans dangerous enemies also make us reliable allies and effective protectors. She paused and looked around the chamber. The old system failed because it had no mechanism for dealing with those who refused to cooperate. It could negotiate and debate, but when someone chose violence over diplomacy, the community had no effective response. The Federation succeeds because we understand that lasting peace requires the strength to defend it. We offer cooperation to those who want it and protection to those who need it. But we also promise swift justice to those who threaten the innocent. As the session ended, Jake reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The galaxy's rejection of humanity had seemed like a disaster at the time. Now it was clear that it had been the best thing that could have happened. The old galactic community had been a comfortable club for established powers who wanted to maintain the status quo. The Terra Federation was a dynamic alliance of worlds, committed to progress, protection, and prosperity for all member species. Outside the chamber windows, ships from dozens of worlds moved through space lanes that were safer and more efficient than ever before. Traders, scientists, and tourists traveled freely under the protection of the Federal Defense Force. Communication signals carried news, entertainment, and knowledge to every corner of Federation space, the species that had once called humans too violent to join galactic civilization now lived under the protection of human military might and prospered under human organizational principles. The galaxy had indeed gotten exactly what they claimed to want: peace, prosperity, and cooperation among the stars. They had simply been wrong about who would provide it. As Jake left the chamber, he smiled at the memory of that bitter day when the Senate had made their last mistake. They had given humanity something to prove. and the entire galaxy was now benefiting from the consequences of that error in judgment.